Imagine being framed by your own brother to impress your father. That's exactly what happened to me. This isn't just family drama, it's betrayal at the highest level. They stole my title, my reputation, and tried to erase me. But what they didn't realize was that I was the one who actually ran the business. This is a revenge and justice story about what happens when the wrong person is pushed too far. I watched my own brother hand our father the fraudulent documents that bore my forged signature, smirking as security escorted me out of the building I helped build. They thought stripping me of my title would end me, but they forgot that I was the one who actually knew how to run the business. The heavy glass doors of Martinez and Associates slammed shut behind me, severing me from the life I had built for the last 7 years. The air outside was cold, but it was nothing compared to the chill sitting in the center of my chest. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching a cardboard box filled with the few personal items I was allowed to take. A framed photo of my dog, a stapler, and a coffee mug that said, "Boss Lady," a gift from a junior analyst who had been crying when the guards marched me past her desk. My name is Emily Martinez. Until 20 minutes ago, I was the chief operations officer of one of the city's most prestigious boutique financial consultancy firms. Now I was a pariah, a thief, a liability, and the architect of my destruction was standing 20 floors up, probably pouring himself a glass of the expensive scotch I had bought for our father's birthday, celebrating his victory. Julian, my older brother. The golden boy who could do no wrong, even when he was doing everything wrong. To understand why this happened, you have to understand the dynamic of the Martinez family. My father, Hector, built the firm from the ground up. He was old school. To him, the business was a legacy, and legacies were passed down to sons. It didn't matter that Julian had barely scraped through business school with a C average. It didn't matter that Julian spent more time on the golf course than looking at spreadsheets. He was the heir. I, on the other hand, was the spare, the workhorse. I graduated top of my class. I spent my 20s sleeping under my desk, fixing Julian's messes, rewriting his proposals, and smoothing over relations with clients he had offended with his arrogance. I thought if I just worked hard enough, if I made myself indispensable, my father would finally see me. I thought meritocracy would eventually outweigh tradition. I was wrong. The incident that ended it all involved the Sterling account. It was our biggest client, a manufacturing conglomerate worth billions. Julian was technically the lead consultant, but I did the work. I always did the work. However, 3 months ago, Julian had tried to hide a massive compliance error he made regarding offshore tax liabilities. Instead of fixing it, which would have cost the firm a small fine, he tried to bury it. When the auditor started sniffing around, Julian panicked. He needed a scapegoat, so he forged my signature on the approval documents for the faulty tax filing. He backdated emails. He planted a file in my personal drive. The meeting this morning was an ambush. I walked into the boardroom expecting a strategy session. Instead, I found my father, Julian, and our head of legal. My father didn't even look at me. He just slid a folder across the table. He told me he was disappointed. He said he couldn't believe his own daughter would jeopardize the family name for a kickback. That was the narrative Julian had spun, that I had taken a bribe to overlook the tax issue. I tried to defend myself. I begged my father to look at the metadata, to check the IP addresses, to just listen to me. He raised a hand to silence me. He said, "Emily, the evidence is conclusive. Julian found it himself. You should be grateful we aren't pressing charges. You are fired for cause, effective immediately." I looked at Julian. He was wearing that practiced look of solemn concern, but his eyes were dancing. He had won. He had finally gotten rid of the sister who made him look bad by simply being competent. As I stood on that sidewalk watching the busy city rush past me, the shock began to fade, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. My father had chosen his pride over the truth. He chose the son who flattered his ego over the daughter who protected his empire. They thought they had broken me.
They thought I would crawl into a hole, humiliated, and disappear. I hailed a taxi. I didn't go home to cry. I went to a print shop. The first month was brutal. The industry is small. Word travels fast when the Martinez family exiles one of their own. I was blacklisted. Headhunters who used to call me weekly wouldn't return my emails. My reputation, which I had polished for a decade, was tarnished with the label of fraud. I sat in my apartment, watching my savings dwindle. I cycled through grief, rage, and depression. But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered Julian's smirk. I remembered my father refusing to make eye contact. I realized I couldn't get a job. I had to make one. I registered a new LLC. I named it Veritas Consulting. Truth. It was a little on the nose, perhaps, but it was a guiding principle. I set up a website that I coded myself. I turned my living room into an office. I had no clients, no staff, and no references. But I had something Julian didn't. I had the knowledge. I knew exactly how Martinez and Associates operated. I knew they overcharged for basic compliance checks. I knew they buried risk assessments in jargon to keep clients dependent. I knew their turnaround times were sluggish because Julian refused to upgrade their software systems. I started small. I reached out to small businesses, local startups, people who couldn't afford the Martinez rates. I offered them radical transparency. I showed them exactly what I was doing, why I was doing it, and how much it cost. I worked 18-hour days. I didn't just give them advice, I gave them armor. 6 months in, I was breaking even. It wasn't the millions I was managing before, but it was mine. Then came the break I was waiting for. I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Mr. Henderson, the CFO of a mid-sized logistics company that had been a client of Martinez and Associates for years. He sounded stressed. He asked if we could meet for coffee, somewhere quiet. When I sat down across from him, he looked tired. He told me that ever since I left, the service at Martinez had plummeted. They missed a filing deadline for him, costing his company $50,000 in penalties. When he called Julian to complain, Julian had blamed a glitch in the government system and billed Henderson for the hours spent fixing it. Henderson said, "Emily, you always shot straight with me. Is this normal?" I looked him in the eye and said, "No, Jim, it's not a glitch, it's incompetence. And I can fix it for half of what they're charging you, and I'll have it done by Friday." He signed with Veritas that afternoon. I fixed his issue in 2 days. Henderson was ecstatic. And here is the thing about happy clients. They talk. Especially rich, powerful ones. They talk at country clubs, they talk at gala dinners, and they talk in boardrooms. The whisper network began to buzz. The word was out. If you want to be wined and dined, go to Martinez. If you want the job done right, go to the girl they fired. Slowly, I began to chip away at their roster. It wasn't a landslide at first, it was a slow erosion. I took their mid-tier clients, the ones who were tired of being treated like second-class citizens by my father and brother. I hired my first employee, the young analyst who had cried when I was fired. She had quit Martinez 2 months after I left because Julian had tried to make her do his laundry. Together, we built a culture of precision and honesty. A year passed, Veritas Consulting was moving into a real office. We were profitable, we were growing, but I wasn't done. I wanted the Sterling account. The Sterling account was the crown jewel. Losing the smaller fish hurt my father's pride, but losing Sterling would hurt the bottom line in a way that could crumble the entire firm. I knew the Sterling contract was up for renewal in 3 months. I also knew that Julian would be lazy. He would assume the renewal was automatic because my father and the CEO of Sterling, Mr. Sterling Sr., were old golf buddies. I spent weeks preparing. I analyzed Sterling's public financial records. I found inefficiencies that Martinez and Associates had ignored for years, lazy accounting that was costing Sterling millions in lost tax credits. I built a proposal that wasn't just a pitch. It was a forensic autopsy of how badly they were being served. I requested a meeting with the new CEO of Sterling Group. The son, David Sterling, had recently taken over day-to-day operations from his father. David was like me, young, hungry, and focused on data, not golf buddies. I walked into the Sterling headquarters, my heart hammering against my ribs. This was the building I used to visit monthly. I knew the receptionist. I knew the security guards. When I sat down with David Sterling, I didn't badmouth my family. I didn't mention the betrayal. I simply opened my laptop. I said, "David, I've gone through your last 5 years of public filings. I believe you were overpaying on your operational compliance by roughly 12%. Here is the math." I walked him through the numbers. I showed him where the Martinez firm was billing for premium services and delivering template work. I showed him the redundancy. David was silent for a long time. Then he asked, "Why didn't you fix this when you were managing the account?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment. I said, "Because every time I proposed these modernizations, I was overruled by management, who preferred the legacy billing structure. I started my own firm so I would never have to overcharge a client again." David nodded slowly. He said, "My father is loyal to your father, Emily, but I answer to the shareholders. This data is undeniable." He didn't sign right away. He said he had to review it, but I knew I had him. 2 weeks later, the industry gala took place. It was the biggest night of the year for the financial sector. Everyone who was anyone was there. I wore a dress that cost more than my first car, bought with Veritas profits. I walked in with my head high. I saw them immediately. My father and Julian were holding court near the bar. My father looked older, more tired. Julian looked frantic, his eyes darting around the room, checking who was talking to whom. When they saw me, the color drained from Julian's face. My father stiffened. I didn't approach them. I let them come to me. Julian marched over, a drink in his hand, looking sloppy. He hissed, "What are you doing here? This is for accredited firms only." I smiled, a genuine, sharp smile. I said, "I know, Julian. Veritas was accredited last month. We're actually a sponsor of the event. Didn't you see the logo on the napkins?" He looked down at the cocktail napkin in his hand. Sure enough, the gold V logo was stamped right there. He crumpled it up. My father walked up behind him. "Emily," he said, his voice cold, "you're making a scene." "I'm not doing anything, Dad," I said. "I'm just enjoying the party." "You shouldn't be here," he said. "You're an embarrassment." Before I could respond, a voice boomed from behind me. "Emily, there you are." It was David Sterling. He walked up, flanked by 2 other executives. He ignored my father and brother completely and shook my hand warmly. David turned to my father. "Hector, good to see you. I assume you've heard the news?" My father looked confused. "What news?" David smiled. "We've decided to move the Sterling Group account. We signed the retainer with Veritas Consulting this morning. Emily's proposal was illuminating." The silence that fell over our little circle was absolute. I could hear the clink of ice in Julian's glass as his hand started to shake. My father's face went purple. You can't do that, David. Our families have done business for 30 years. David shrugged. "Business evolves, Hector. We need a firm that prioritizes efficiency over tradition. And frankly, after reviewing the audit Emily provided, it seems we've been paying for a lot of phantom hours. We're actually having our legal team look into the past billing cycles. You might want to get your records in order." David turned back to me. "Emily, let's go grab a drink. I want to introduce you to the CEO of TechCore. They're looking for new representation." I nodded. "I'll be right there, David." As David walked away, I turned back to my family. The destruction was total. Losing Sterling wasn't just a lost contract. The threat of a legal audit into past billing meant they were under the microscope. If they dug deep enough, they would find Julian's other frauds. They would find the rot. Julian looked like he was going to vomit. Dad looked at me with a mixture of horror and realization. For the first time, he saw me. He didn't see his daughter. He saw the shark he had raised and then tried to drown. I looked at Julian. I leaned in close, so only he could hear. I said, "You forged my signature, Julian. You stole my career. You thought I was the weak link, but you forgot one thing. I was the one doing the work. I know where every skeleton is buried because I'm the one who had to build the closet." I turned to my father. He whispered, "Emily, we can fix this. Come back. We can work something out. You can be a partner, 50-50. I laughed. It was a light, airy sound that felt amazing. I said, "Partner, Dad, why would I want to be a partner in a sinking ship? I don't want your title. I don't want your approval, and I certainly don't want your business. I already have the best parts of it." I walked away. I walked toward the bar, toward my future, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their own arrogance. The fallout was swift. With the Sterling Group leaving, the dam broke. Other clients, sensing blood in the water and hearing rumors of the billing audit, fled. Most of them came to Veritas. 6 months after the gala, Martinez and Associates filed for bankruptcy restructuring. The audit David Sterling initiated uncovered more than just padding. It uncovered the tax fraud Julian had pinned on me. But this time, they had access to the server backups that proved Julian had altered the files after I was fired. Julian is currently facing indictment. He's looking at 3 to 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. My father had to liquidate his personal assets to pay the fines and legal fees. The legacy he tried so hard to protect is gone, his name synonymous with cautionary tales in business schools. Last week, my father called me. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it later. He sounded old. He asked if we could meet for coffee. He said he missed his daughter. I deleted the message. I sat in my corner office looking out over the city skyline. My assistant knocked on the door. "Emily, the team is ready for the strategy meeting on the Vanguard merger." I stood up, straightened my blazer, and grabbed my coffee mug, the same one I carried out in that cardboard box. "I'm coming," I said. They tried to frame me to impress my father. They tried to erase me. But in the end, all they did was push me to build something better, something cleaner, something mine. The best revenge isn't anger. It isn't screaming. It isn't even seeing them in handcuffs, though that was a nice bonus. The best revenge is looking at the empire you built with your own 2 hands and knowing that the people who betrayed you are watching from the outside, wishing they had realized that you were the gold they were looking for all along. If you believe in revenge stories where justice actually wins, hit like, subscribe, and stay with this channel. There are more stories where the underestimated come out on top.